Hey, thank you for joining us for the Local Loop. The Local Loop is an online conversation with community leaders as they work through the difficulties of navigating the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as keep you in the loop as to what's going on. Each episode, myself and Bryan, the lead pastor of Oak Ridge Church, will host local community leaders and business leaders to see how they're navigating through this time and also what you need to know. Today, I'm excited to have the mayor of the city of Salisbury, Jake Day. Mayor, thank you for joining us, taking out some time of your busy schedule to be here with us.
Hey, gentlemen, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So here you've been marching ahead as the mayor of the city of Salisbury, leading the city through some great projects and great times, one being a downtown revitalization project, which has just brought emphasis back and life back to downtown Salisbury. And then boom, COVID-19 hits. Tell us how that's affected the city and how you're leading and navigating through that.
You know, this was obviously not something anybody anticipated. So it's not as if we, we're gearing up for preparing for, spending years getting ready for the moment when a pandemic would hit. My predecessor, he used to say, I've been through an earthquake, a hurricane, and I can't remember what else. But, I guess I've got my own saying, I've been through 2 floods, a tornado, and a pandemic. Look, that's just what we do, right? You've got to navigate through times of crisis as well as through times of positivity and of opportunity. And I think, a crisis will illuminate or expose what strengths an organization has and what strengths a community has, and also what weaknesses. And a couple of the things that I'd share just in terms of strengths and weaknesses is I really feel like our community was quick to respond when early on I said, hey, let's get together in what we have first called the Emergency Business Roundtable, and what we're now calling the Salisbury Area Corona Recovery Task Force, or Coronavirus Recovery Task Force. The community was quick to respond and say, we're in. And nobody said, this is not a big deal, let's ignore it, let's just wait for it to go away. Everybody said, we're in, game on, let's come together. And that really impressed me. And that's, I think, fantastic. Yesterday, in an interview with on the Oasis radio station with our Creole-speaking friends, I think we highlighted a weakness organizationally, not as a community, but organizationally that we have, which is just that, in a time of crisis, I think you learn what capabilities come to you readily and what capabilities you maybe have to dig a little deeper for. And language and translation services are something that admittedly we're not right at the forefront. We have an on-call service, and we have some services that we make available in terms of printed materials, but this is a time when everybody needs to hear the message regardless of what language they speak. So the same is true for our non-hearing friends. So those who need it in sign language. Same with our sight-limited friends. I mean, across the board. So you'll learn your strengths and weaknesses through a moment like this.
What I think is beautiful, I just want to commend you on your leadership, is that as leaders, and my doctorate is in leadership, and as I'm kind of a leadership junkie. I love reading and learning and studying, and actually right now I was right in the middle of reading a book on Churchill, which what could be better, as a crisis leader, and so I think leadership is so critical in a moment of crisis, because you're there to bring clarity, and you're also there to to understand what is most urgent, most important, bringing those services to the forefront and serving the people that so desperately need that. So I think leadership counts the most when we're in a situation like this. So thank you for your leadership in the city. And I know organizationally you've been trying to pivot and figure out different ways that you can address these issues. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you've been facing during this pandemic?
Well, it's a great question. And there is a balance that a mayor has to strike, especially in Maryland's 3 strong mayor cities, where you're both manager and leader. I have the constituency of my employees and the constituency of the public to balance, and sometimes the demands and the interests are either in contrast or just maybe a little bit working in not opposite directions, but on parallel tracks that don't necessarily meet. And I've got an obligation to protect my employees and their health, and not to expose them unnecessarily to risk. But at the same time, many of us in public service have taken on the obligation of putting ourselves at risk in support of and in order to protect our citizens. So it's a tough situation. That's one of the challenges that I've got to deal with in this position. Another challenge that I've found is the rapidly changing nature of the information environment. What I know today will be outdated tomorrow, and what I knew yesterday is outdated today. So I'm learning that communication becomes so critical, and it's not enough to hold a periodic press conference or to occasionally share something on social media. I've got to be daily present and available, and so I've found that I'm a little more sleepless than I usually would be through this crisis. And I know leaders have to take care of themselves. I do understand that. But I have found that people are looking for answers on a daily basis. And part of the reason that they're searching for answers is because the answer has changed multiple times in the short time that we've been going through this as a community and as a nation.
I had the opportunity to visit Churchills Bunker while I was in London, and it's a really, really cool tour if anyone ever goes there. Of course, I'm a huge Churchill fan, so that was a draw. But they still had the room set up where he had a bed, and he had his little, his bowl set up and all the things that he needed there. And he basically would catch sleep at about 30 to 45 minutes at a time. And so he was on a 24-hour cycle because obviously that's what the crisis required. And so thanks for all that you do. And I know it's got to be really, really draining. What do you think that what do you think you wish that the city of Salisbury, what do you wish citizens knew at this time? What do you feel like, man, I wish they understood this?
Well, I think the question that I get asked most often, that my answer is probably least satisfactory to folks, is around the testing regimen for this disease. You got to remember that we're dealing with a virus that exhibits itself or manifests itself in people in very different ways. Some people, the 3 of us right here, it's entirely possible that one of us would show no symptoms, one of us would need to be admitted to the ICU, and the other would have what are essentially flu-like symptoms. I'm
trying to imagine which one you're thinking is the most at risk based on hair color.
Well, look, we've already acknowledged that I'm not sleeping. Let's just say that I'm the one who would be in a lot of trouble. So I think knowing that it's not a simple and straightforward, I'm gonna be okay, and it's not a simple and straightforward, this is going to be fatal and I have to, take every precaution. And it's kind of a toss-up. That is not satisfactory to most people. And so when they're asking for information about, how can I be tested or why was I denied testing? One of the things I wish people knew is that it's not that I don't want to provide you answers. It's not that the hospital doesn't want to provide you answers. It's that there are multiple actors who we're doing our best to synchronize here, but aren't all able to share the same level of information with one another at the frequency that would be, I think, satisfying to people for us to do so in order to get the answer they want when they want it. And so, I just wish people knew that there's not an effort to hold back any information. There is not an effort to deny access to information about how many people have been tested, how many people are under investigation of being ill, how many people have been confirmed positive. The facts are, across the country, we simply don't have the testing supplies we need. In our community and communities like ours that have not had the high rate of illness yet, we're not getting less access to those supplies than a place like, say, Baltimore or Montgomery County that are, under relatively extreme situation compared to, a regular flu season. And they're getting more testing supplies, but still not enough. And so I want people to just understand the very dynamic nature of this event, that it's changing every day and that we are trying to do our best. I'm trying to do my best, and I know I'm not alone in that front, to communicate everything we can when we can, and to make sure that it's accurate information.
I think you're doing a good job at getting that information out. And again, thank you for being part of this, because, you do have to get this out, and there's a lot of different circles that we all travel in, and being able to allow our viewers to hear from you and what's going on, I know is going to help a lot of people. And, when I think about, like, are you in constant communication with PRMC, Jake, Mayor Day? I mean, is there a fluid line of communication so that you both can, serve each other well through that and then serve the community well? I mean, PRMC is like kind of to this community and serves to take care of the health and well-being of our community. How is that communication going between you two?
That's a really good question. So while we've been sitting on this call, Bo Kennedy, the chief of special police over at PRMC, has called my cell phone. And I know what he's calling about, which is a good thing. We've had quite a few churches that want to go pray on PRMC's property. And what they're trying to do is have one answer, rather than being inconsistent and saying yes to some and no to others. They're trying to have one answer. So they've been trying to come up with a plan. So I suspect that they now have that plan. I think at 3 o'clock they were meeting. So I wish I had the answer for you right now. I don't, but I guarantee you it's in my voicemail, and we'll make sure we share that. But yeah, I've got an open line of communication with Steve Leonard, the president and CEO of PRMC. He was one of the first people I called early on. I remember I was taking a tour of Salisbury Christian with my wife. We were looking at it for the girls. They're in preschool and getting to the stage where we have to start making a decision about where they're going to school. And while we were on that tour, things started to develop relatively quickly. And I called Steve. I just had to, and say, what should I be doing? How should I be interpreting the information that I'm hearing on national news? Is this coming here? Are you prepared? Is our health department prepared? What actions does city government need to take today? And Steve was very open and transparent with what he knew and what his organization didn't know yet, and the things that they could do to prepare. And I've been very impressed with PRMC's pre-planning. And this is something that we've adopted as a city too, this notion that at each stage, let's plan for the next stage. And in each instance of the governor amending his orders or adding new restrictions, we have prepared for the next stage, written our own orders to put in place, and then simply held back and waited for him to implement when there was an indicator that he would. We want to allow him to continue to lead and have a similar regulatory framework across the state. Now, obviously, this weekend we put in place some rules that we didn't think were going to be implemented at any point statewide, so we went ahead and did it here. But that was, again, out of an abundance of caution and concern for the health and well-being of our citizens. And I'll take you all the way back to, if you don't mind, I'll take you all the way back to the original question or the first question you asked. And, I'm reminded that so much of our efforts over the last my 7 years as a public official and 4 years as mayor, our efforts have been to unite people, to bring them together, literally, physically, to have them in the same spaces together, celebrating, enjoying one another, happy, upbeat, warm, friendly, embracing. we can't do any of those things now. But we've got to learn new ways of connecting. And so, yes, it may seem as if we're almost having to implement rules and standards that run counter to the very things that we've been fighting for years for our community. But I really have faith that they aren't lost, that people are understanding this in the logical part of their brain as we must do this, but their emotions will still say, hey, we want to reunite as a community once again. And I believe Salisbury is going to do that. And I think America will do that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great feedback. I've told, we're in the middle of a building campaign. And I know one of the first things I got hit with is, oh my gosh, Pastor, should we be moving forward to this building? And I said, well, here's what I know. When we come out of this, and we will come out of this. But when we do, two things I know people will be hungry for, and that is they're going to be hungry for faith and they're going to be hungry for fellowship. And we need to prepare for the reality that I believe there's going to be a surge of people saying, look, we want to get together. We want to be community again. And I think that's going to be a powerful tool just within the city and as well as within all the faith communities. I think churches should be preparing for how we can, handle the surge. And so how would you recommend that faith communities best serve? At our church, we do a thing called Peace, and we operate under a thing called the Peace Plan. And we partnered with you a couple of years ago doing a city project for cleaning up around the bridge and the tunnel. And we worked in 32 different projects across the Eastern Shore, working with community partners to make Delmarva a better place and give back. But our operation kind of SOP is that we believe that the best way to help someone is to ask them, not just show up and say, here we are to save the day, but literally to say, how can we serve? And so what do you think faith communities can or should best do in this season to serve?
Can I first say that to your point about people's hunger for faith and fellowship coming out of this, I'd say look no further than what's happening right now as we go through it. People are finding ways to come together, and even at 2:00 today on Monday, 2:00 on Monday of this week, we had a call of the municipal and county governments from the C&D Canal to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. So all the Delmarva cities, towns, and counties. And that's our third week having that call. And on that call, Senator Addie Eckert shared that her church in Cambridge was having record number of people showing up for their drive-in service, and shared that National Geographic had actually come out to take pictures of them on the waterfront. So pretty incredible testament, I think, to how people are responding. But to answer your question, how can faith communities, how can our churches and our church leaders and their congregations help? And my answer would be this, that I would first ask you to continue to find ways to unite people and to bring them together. I mean, I realize traditional church service isn't possible right now, but we're coming up on Easter. I think we're coming up on a time when people are reflecting on their faith and why they believe, and why they're in our case, in my case, why they're a follower of Jesus Christ. So I think people are reflecting on that right now, and so pulling them together and using this as a time not to lose people, but as a time to draw them closer to the church and closer together is powerful, and that enables number two. Number two is one of the things that and you just indicated it with the story about the peace plan for your church, is that churches do an incredible job of delivering services to people in a way that government never could, and that service goes beyond the spiritual and enters the physical well-being, the realm of the physical well-being. So I think about so many people right now that have lost their job, so many people that they might not lose their house during this crisis, but in the economic crisis that comes after, they could. So what I'd say is let's deal with those. Let's triage those problems. And problem one, I think, is going to be hunger. I applaud our school system for continuing the feeding program out in 18 to 20 sites around Wicomico County. But there are a lot of adults and children that probably aren't getting to that feeding program, but there are a lot of adults that are going hungry or that are going to go hungry. And so what we've tried to do is work with our partners, including the Army National Guard, and getting them to assist in the delivery and distribution of food. And I do hope that in the next week, we're going to be able to announce some of those partnerships. But what they were looking for, I've been working with Lieutenant Colonel Wortham, the Joint Force Headquarters chaplain, who's in charge of the humanitarian relief efforts for the state through this crisis. And Colonel Wortham has said, they want to get here on the shore. They want to connect with churches that have experience getting basic needs met for people in their communities. So I'd say to any church willing to connect us to people that might be hungry or otherwise in need, please let me know. Let's work together. Let's line up resources. I can get you people so that it's not members of your congregation who are putting themselves at risk distributing food, but I can get the people, young, healthy soldiers present to help. If you can make the connections to the people in need, that's what's critical right now. And I think that's a big way that churches can help.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's super duper. In fact, we won't pre-announce, but we just might have met with somebody that you're referring to even today. We own a shopping center, so we're a great distribution point, and we believe that that's something that God wants us to steward. So we've already been doing that and making plans for that, and we got a couple of other partners that are helping us to be able to feed families that otherwise would not be able to be fed during this season. So we're working on that diligently. Thank you that you're a part of that. So any last thoughts that you want to share with folks?
I would just say this, that while we're in this crisis, for anybody looking for information, I remain available for your Facebook messages or your tweets or your emails or your text messages or your calls. And I would say, feel free to tune in at 5 o'clock each day on Facebook Live at the City of Salisbury's Facebook page as I do a daily update just on what's changed. I know people are hungry to know what's next and what's going on, and that's my recommendation is tune in at 5 each day. And the last thing I'd say is a guy named Chris Eccleston, who has a business called Delmarva Veteran Builders, shared something in the very first meeting, and it's a mantra that he's brought into his business. And he said, when heading into a tough time or a crisis, he said he recommended the mantra, be the buffalo. And he shared the story of the buffalo, which, a brilliant animal, heads into the storm, turns into the storm when a storm is coming across the prairie, recognizing that it's the fastest way through it. And we could run from this thing, but if we unite and we turn into the storm, and if we be the buffalo, I think we're going to get through it faster, and we're going to get through it healthier than we would otherwise.
Jake, thank you. You're leading us well through this, and we appreciate that, and know that we at Oak Ridge and many other local churches are praying for you. I had the pleasure of hearing that from Chris at Rody Joe's earlier this year, and it's a great story. Hey, man, thank you so much. We're praying for you, and we're here for you. If we can support and help in any way, we'll be talking more about that, but the line's always open for us as well, okay?
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you both. And thank you for doing this. I think this is really important. Keep it up.
Thank you. God bless. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.